Here we are at the Friday Night Movie Podcast at Gamer Comic Expo with cosplay legend Rick Stafford, also known as the True Aquaman,
Correct.
or the King Aquaman on Twitter. Okay, I just want to make sure we are very clear. Now, when you see the pictures of this gentleman in his Aquaman gear, you think you are looking at the Aquaman you grew up with as a kid. But today, you're dressed in an outfit that means so much to me. You are an X-Wing pilot.
I am an X-Wing pilot.
And now, there are many different eras of X-Wings, and there's many different uniforms and things. Is there a specific X-Wing era or squadron that you are cosplaying as?
Well, the actual character that I'm doing is Tai Cho, who is he was in this was pre-Disney banning the canon of the books. So he was actually in the books as the leader of Rogue Squadron for a while.
Oh,
and
wow.
And he flew not only the X-Wing, he was also a Y-Wing commander.
Okay, you see, I know Disney banned those books, but I think they mean so much to people that there's no reason for us as fans to let those go, right?
Yeah, true, very true.
And the Rogue Squadron stories were amazing.
They were amazing, yeah.
I mean, why haven't we done more Wedge Antilles?
Yeah, exactly. And, although there was just a little bit of crossover between the movies and these characters, the fact that these stories went on their own, we have the Mandalorian series coming out on Disney Plus now, but the Rogue Squadron story would have been a perfect side story.
It would have, exactly. In some ways, I feel like they made up new side stories of things that, like, nobody asked for a Mandalorian, but we'd love a Rogue Squadron.
Yeah, exactly.
I think nobody asked for a Han Solo prequel either, but I would have watched a Lando movie any day of the week.
Oh, yeah, true.
I feel like Donald Glover is Lando. Everyone's lining up to see that movie.
Perfectly, yes.
Okay, now from what I understand, we talked to the great Athena Finger yesterday, who said
the amazing, beautiful, gorgeous, yes,
Athena Finger, who was so gracious with her time with us. She says you have an incredible story. What is your story?
Okay. Well, I've got many amazing stories, but let us start at the beginning, and that will be probably a good starting point.
Okay, like birth?
Birth of a cosplayer.
Oh, okay, birth of a cosplayer. I love it. This is origin stories, like
an
a
origin
superhero
story.
thing.
It is. It's very much an origin story, and it leads well into what I'm wearing today. So, this story takes place 16 years ago, and it takes place in a hospital in Jacksonville, Florida, with a small boy named Christian who was battling leukemia.
Oh, wow.
He did not know he was battling leukemia, but he was in the hospital as a 7-year-old, did not know what he was going through. And he was exposed to something at the time called the Clone Wars while watching Cartoon Network. Now, this was not the TV series.
The animated that predated the series.
The Samurai Jack-looking five-minute sections.
I know what you're talking about. Those initial animated things, those blew my mind.
Right.
Those are amazing. I own them. They're
okay.
incredible.
Yeah, they are. They're beautiful, great stuff. So this young boy saw these and turned to me, because I was with him, and said, "What is this Star Wars?"
Whoa!
And
that was the first Star Wars thing he ever saw.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
So I said, let me introduce you to Star Wars. So I bought the DVDs, got him a little DVD player, and he began watching these videos over and over and over again.
As one should.
As one should. And became completely and utterly obsessed with Star Wars, which to my mind was the perfect thing. Well, one night, while hanging out in his room, he turns to me and says, "Am I becoming a Jedi?
Whoa.
Am I going through my Jedi trials?"
Wow.
And so I came to a pinnacle moment in my life where, do I tell the boy the truth about his cancer battle, or do I go with the lie? I went with the lie.
Okay, but I think that's what many of the Jedis would have done.
Yeah.
Yoda, Obi-Wan, they told Luke or
from
other
their
Jedis
perspective,
from a certain point of view.
Yes,
right.
yes,
That's how you bring someone along in the Jedi
yes,
way.
Exactly. So I said yes, and so the next time I came to visit this boy, I brought him a Jedi costume. I brought him at the time they were called Force FX sabers. I think they've changed names.
Oh yeah. But the legit sabers.
The legit sound, lights, all of that. And it was great. It was absolutely great for about a week and a half. And then he was like, I'm a Padawan, but I don't have a master.
Wow.
So I went out and spent $1,000 on, an actual Jedi Master robes outfit, custom leather boots, and
Whoa.
and
Now, who would be your Jedi Master fashion icon you were looking at? Were you like a Mace Windu? Were you Qui-Gon Jinn?
It was actually a combination of those two.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I had the Qui-Gon Jinn look, but I actually used the Mace Windu lightsaber.
That's awesome.
And that
purple lightsaber.
Yes.
Oh, legendary.
And it actually worked out to my benefit to the illusion of being a Jedi Master, because if you look at the Force FX sword, my Christian had the green Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi, and that had a little switch on it, and it actually said on-off on the side. You had to turn it on and off. The Mace Windu saber does not have an on-off switch. It has a gold plate on the saber that has to be slid to activate it. So I could stand there with it in a fighting position, just slightly move my thumb, and the sword would activate. And for Christian, I must have been master. I can control the blade with my mind.
That's amazing.
And it completely blew his mind. And so I had to be a master if I could do that with mine, and he had to physically turn his on and off. And so then I went about getting books, because 16 years ago, there were not books on Jedi 101. Like, you can go to Barnes & Noble now and pick up The Religion of the Jedi, Jedi 101, Jedi for Dummies. All of those books exist now. Back then, they didn't exist. So I went and bought books on sword fighting techniques, on meditation techniques, on thoughtfulness. I studied books about the Buddhist monks in order to understand, because that's what George Lucas used with the Buddhist monks. So in order to be the most accurate Jedi Master, I wanted to be the best I could. And so every time I would come in...
Yoda was right. You don't need the Jedi texts.
Yeah.
You can build your own playbook.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I did. And I still have those books in my library to this day, along with the Jedi 101 and all those.
Yeah, all the other ones when they came out.
In fact, I even have that really cool one that comes in a case where you put the button and the doors slide open and the text comes up, and it makes all kinds of cool noises and stuff. Yeah, it's an awesome book.
Amazing.
So I worked with him for the better part of 10 months on Jedi training, and then things took a turn for the worse, and I tried to take him to Star Wars weekends in Orlando at Disney World, and unfortunately he was sick every weekend.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And so it didn't work out. Well, I found a picture, and it showed a group called the 501st.
Oh, I know the 501st well. They are an amazing group of people.
They are. And so I contacted them and said, look, I can't get him to Star Wars weekends. Could you bring a little bit of Star Wars weekends to him and visit him? And they said, yeah, we'd love to do that. I said, well, he's being discharged home on hospice. So could you do it on this particular weekend? They said, well, we can't do it that weekend. We have a big event. Can we come 2 weeks later? I said, okay, but you're on borrowed time. But okay, I mean, I'm on your schedule, unfortunately. So he unfortunately passed away the weekend in between.
Oh, wow. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And he actually died the day I was on the phone with Mark Hamill.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mark Hamill wanted to talk to him. Unfortunately, I had to cancel the phone call with him and tell him, sorry, Mr. Hamill, he's crashing, and had to hang up with Mark Hamill.
Oh, my goodness.
But we'll get back to that later. So he passes away. I reached back out to the 501st, and I let them know about the fact that although you couldn't be there for him in life, would you be there for him in his death and be his memorial guard at his celebration of life?
Wow.
Well, they just fell over themselves to be at this event. So over 20 of them showed up at his memorial and lined the doorway to the memorial center.
Oh, my goodness.
So when you walked in, you had to walk through a line of stormtroopers, clone troopers, Jedis.
Wow.
And
that is incredible.
yeah,
It's
so
really heartbreaking, but also uplifting story at the
Yeah.
same time. Is it fair to say that?
Yeah, I would say so. And so halfway through the ceremony, everything stopped, and the entire troop of troopers and Jedi marched into the room, marched down the middle, and there was a viewing room off to the side. It had a big glass viewing window, and they went in there, took a stance in front of the seats. Each and every one of them then removed their buckets and held them at attention.
Wow.
2 representatives, one from the 501st, one from the Rebel Legion, then came out, and they made him an honorary member. And to this day, he is the only child who has a designation with the 501st. They have since opened a child version called Galactic Cadets or something, but he has an actual designation, TC 1219.
Wow.
With the 501st, and they made him an honorary Jedi Knight with the Rebel Legion group, which is the sister organization that does all the good
absolutely.
guys.
We see those guys at all the cons, and I know they're very. They do a lot. I mean, they started really as a nonprofit.
Well, they still
organization,
are.
right?
Yep, they still do,
and do charity work.
And they do tons and tons of charity work. So this was just another charity opportunity for them, but one obviously that was very personal to me. If you haven't figured out by now, Christian was my son.
Wow.
And so after the ceremony, there was a wake event at a nearby home, and toward the end of the evening, the same guy who had made my son TC 1219, and by the way, TC in the 501st lingo is clone trooper, because my son wanted to be a Jedi. They made him a Jedi general,
wow.
or made him a clone trooper, because the clones were the army of the Republic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so he was a clone trooper. Well, so as the evening wore on, the group leader made an announcement, and while he was making the announcement, these guys brought in this huge box from outside. And he said, Rick, because of the way you handled your son's situation and what you did for him, you seem like the kind of person we would like within our ranks.
Wow.
Here is a clone trooper kit. You have 3 months to build this kit and meet us in Miami for Revenge of the Sith grand opening, or the opening night.
Wow.
So I spent the next 3 months learning about armor building and building this kit. Spent more time in Joann's fabric than I ever thought I would as a man. I burned out 2 Dremel tools. I was working with snaps, Velcro, JB Weld, spandex, things I had never worked with before. It definitely wasn't my background in building. And couldn't get the helmet right. So a friend of mine who had a Harley Davidson heard my problem. He goes, well, there's a guy at the shop who paints gas tanks. Maybe he can paint this helmet.
Wow.
So I took it to him with some pictures of clone troopers from the movie. Now you got to remember, in the movie, none of the clone troopers existed. They were all CGI.
Oh, really?
Yes. There's never been a real...
So Tamora Morrison was never in that outfit?
No.
Oh, my
No, he
goodness.
just wore a green suit, and it was every bit of it.
That's
So
wild.
I'm building a costume around something that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, and at the time of Revenge of the Sith, so the clone troopers had only existed for a few years that anyone's ever seen.
Yeah, these were all the white clones from, Attack of the Clones. I hadn't seen Revenge of the Sith yet. And thankfully, neither had Christian, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And you know where I'm going with that.
I mean...
Being a Jedi doesn't want, if he had seen the fact that the clones had turned on the Jedi, I think it would have crushed him.
Oh, yeah.
Because he loved the clones so much.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I have so many drawings of him drawing clone troopers
now I understand. Right, and that's still many years before they would build that incredible story within the Clone Wars TV show,
right?
Of Commander, the Captain Rex,
yeah,
who would defy Order 66 and stay in as a hero, which is, by the way, one of the best later day Star Wars stories is of that. So
exactly.
At least we know that a Captain Rex existed, but that would have been very difficult. That would
it would have been very difficult, especially for an 8-year-old to have seen the film. So the helmet got painted. beautifully. And unlike Stormtrooper helmets, which if you ever get a chance to hold one, are just resin, and so they're very lightweight.
Oh wow!
Or not resin, they're not PVC, styrene.
Oh, okay.
So they're about as light as like a red Solo cup.
Oh wow!
I mean, yeah, they don't weigh anything until you put like electronics and stuff, and even then they're still really lightweight. Mine was a solid resin helmet.
Oh boy!
So mine felt like a Kevlar helmet.
Like 20 pounds? 30
Oh no,
pounds?
not that heavy, but at least 8 to 10.
Okay, that's like what I squat because I'm not very strong.
So when when I would put my helmet on, you felt like you were about to go into combat. I mean, it was like you almost wanted that hiss sound of the airlock, being sealed in. So, so I get down to Miami, and they have built this entire blockade runner hallway leading into the movie theater, with a door painted on what I found out later was a styrofoam wall. So what we were going to do that night was they were going to have us in the movie theater, and they pump in smoke behind us, and they were going to have us like a SWAT team lined up, hand on shoulder.
Wow.
And then there was a DJ playing the sound effects from the original New Hope.
Oh, wow.
And you'd hear the cutting of the door, and then we were going to bust through, come running down the hallway.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's how it was all set up to be done. And it did go off that way.
Oh, that's incredible.
But
and that's really fan driven, right?
Yeah.
This isn't some studio thing. These are fans getting together,
mm-hmm.
trying to do something amazing. That's incredible.
So the movie was going to be a midnight premiere. Well, I was there early enough that we got to see the movie at 7 o'clock. We got to see the manager special. When he gets in to go in and make sure all the advertising's done, that nothing's messed up. So we got to see the movie before anybody else.
Wow.
So what I did before the movie was I went to the concession stand and I bought a pink lemonade, nachos, and a hot dog. And I took my seat in the theater.
Excellent choices, by the way.
Excellent choices. And I put those in the seat next to me. And then in the cup holder between my seat and that seat, I put Christian's ashes.
Wow. Wow.
Because that's what he would eat at the movie, with a hot dog, nachos, and the pink lemonade.
Oh, wow. And so you brought...
I swore to him I would take him to see the next Star Wars movie.
Wow.
And so before I did my very first public cosplay event, I took my son to see the last Star Wars movie at the time.
Wow.
And in fact, when he passed away, the next day, and this was incredibly hard, and to this day I don't know how I did it. The day after he passed away, or the next day, I went to the crematorium and had them bring him out to me. And there's nothing that prepares you to have your son brought out in a cardboard box out of a walk-in freezer.
Oh, wow.
And when he had passed away, he was in a t-shirt and boxer shorts. So I cut those off of him, and I dressed him in his Jedi robes and put a letter from the family in the robe, and that's how he went to the crematorium, as a Jedi.
That's an incredible story.
And today, his ashes sit in an aluminum sports bottle that has his name and information engraved on it, with a Jedi pin affixed to the outside of it.
That's beautiful.
And then I bought, because he was a huge Star Wars Lego maniac, built every Star Wars Lego set you could find,
oh, wow.
and built it in record time while sitting in the hospital bed fighting cancer. So I bought the Lego Yoda statue, and I built half of it with glue, the bottom half, and I built the top half down with glue, so that it would be able to be as a container, basically. And his ashes sit inside a Jedi Master at all times.
That's incredible. And I think, as a kid who grew up with Star Wars and who grew up with it as such an anchor for me in so many things, I can only just say that it's beyond, it's beautiful, it's humbling to hear how this was something that binds your family together, truly in the Force is the best way I can describe it. Like, you guys are really in the Force, and I sort of want to, I want to say to folks who kind of say, oh, it's just a movie, and oh, the fans get too worked up. I'm like, people have to realize this means a lot to people. That, like, yes, fanboys can be annoying, but when you're talking about the Jedi, when you're talking about Star Wars, Luke Skywalker, Yoda,
the purest concepts of these things are amazing.
They're amazing, and they're the stuff that kids literally build their dreams and hopes on. Like, for me, I'd love to know who your iconic character is, but for me, Luke Skywalker, my whole life was the guy. And we chatted yesterday a little bit about how everyone knows I don't like The Last Jedi, but I will say I was part of why I was sad about The Last Jedi is that Luke's journey, overcoming the worst parts of his heritage and embracing the best parts of his heritage, is, I think, something every parent wants for their kids. And when the movie at times suggested maybe he had gone backwards, it kind of hurt me.
Yeah, he became the get off my lawn old man.
Yeah, and I just always, I understand in a sense, and I thought, by the way, Mark Hamill was incredible in that movie. I thought that was the Best Supporting Actor Oscar as far as I was concerned.
If anybody can drink the milk the way he did.
If anyone can be forced to do that scene and still deliver the commitment and the performance that he did. So for me, Luke Skywalker, it means so much to me on that level. How about you? Is there a character?
Well, he is the ultimate hero journey. I don't know how much you know about Joseph Campbell.
I know, and I know.
I love Joseph. That's one of my favorite authors.
And I know it's a huge part of Star Wars. It's a huge influence on George Lucas.
Yeah, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, Mask of the Gods. Those are all some of his better works. All talk about the mythical journey that has taken place in all of these Greek tragedies and whatnot, and that's exactly what George did. He studied the Greek tragedies, and that's what you see in the Star Wars films. It's not, George didn't come up with a whole lot of original ideas. I mean, let's face it, these concepts come from external elements.
And sometimes I feel like people get all over Star Wars, and they're like, oh, it's just a hero's journey. I'm like, yo, what makes it beautiful and great is actually it's so simple, and then it's the characters.
Yeah.
And it's the way those characters move through that story that makes it wonderful.
Right. But he took from the serials, the radio serials and the early movie serials of the 1920s and 30s. He took from World War II the fighter, the dog fights, and the tyranny of the fascist tyranny. He took from the Buddhist monks. I mean, all these great elements of our society he took from and just put it into this Star Wars drama, or in the space drama, the space opera.
Oh, yeah.
And did such a great job with it. And yeah, you're right. When people pick it apart, it's like, well, let's see you do better.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I mean, you've got the same abilities. Let's see you do better.
So, first of all, it's so hard to segue into other topics when you've shared such a beautiful, humbling story. So before we ask you any more questions, I just want to say an extraordinary thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
And from my family, my sisters. This is a labor of love for our family, this podcast. And so for someone to share a family story that you just shared, it means the world to us. And
thank you.
It will mean the world to our audience. Can I ask you also some more Star Wars questions?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. When you think about those, the different movies and how you mentioned some iconic scenes and the things that George Lucas took. You think that George Lucas took his inspiration from, and when you talk about picking things apart, how do you feel? So some of the most picked apart things ever were the prequels, right? I remember living through the prequel period. But in some respects, I feel like now there's a certain revisionism or coming to terms with them or frankly enjoyment. Like, I've gone back and watched them now, and I like them so much more now than I did when I first saw them. Now, I was never an extreme hater of them. I always liked them. But now I feel like there's something like they've settled in and they've become part of the
the continuity of the storyline.
Exactly. It's like they have roots now.
Mm-hmm.
How about for you? How do you feel over time? How have those elements of the story have
I wasn't a big fan of number one. I wasn't a big pod racer fan. I mean, it's just.
I'm the pod racing is goofy kind of guy.
Yeah. I had a hard time with the first one. Attack of the Clones, I felt like they finally started getting into a groove. And I really, 2 and 3 I was okay with. Number 1, if I had to watch them all, I could start with number 2 and be happy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Or watch some of the best parts of the Clone Wars series and like set with number 2 and Revenge of the Sith.
Well, I actually read there was a little graphic novel series that came out about the Clone Wars as well, and I read all of those because they came out while my son was in the hospital.
Oh yeah, they were like those small books. They were kind of very colorful.
Yes.
They looked like the Samurai Jack.
Yeah, exactly.
Those were great. I have like 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah, I have the whole collection. And of course, I would sit there in the hospital reading those because they came out at the same time. And so they're all good stories, and they talked about the clones fighting on the different planets and all the little backstories and getting characters. So I got to see that world built up a little bit more. But Anakin was already Anakin, and Obi-Wan was definitely in that teaching mode at that point, and you see Annie kind of going the wrong way sometimes already in the storylines.
Yeah, and that's where you see the slow change, which I think is really cool. All right, let me ask you some questions about cosplaying. You told this amazing story about building your first costume.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're dressed as an X-Wing pilot. Yesterday you were Assassin's Creed, one of the Assassin's Creed.
Ezio
dudes.
from Revelation.
Okay, Ezio. Yep. Okay. Yep. People look at these and they'll say, "Oh yeah, so and so just bought a costume." But when you actually pay attention to these costumes that a cosplayer uses, these are works of art. How do you go? Because these are not things you just simply bought somewhere. These are things you constructed and added details to. So today you're rocking the X-Wing helmet, the Rogue Squadron helmet, the Rogue Squadron outfit here.
Yep.
What are some of the things that go into making something so ornate and frankly amazing for a fan to be around?
Well, some of the elements, I won't lie, some of the elements are bought through costuming companies. And I call them costuming companies because anybody can put an outfit on. And
this is not an Amazon Target costume.
No, definitely not what you buy off the shelf there. Like the suit itself was bought through an Asian company that had all the right pockets and all that. But then it had to be modified greatly because the zippers were nothing. So I had to put new zippers, heavy-duty zippers in it. The Velcro was all white. So everything shined, you saw the white everywhere. So you had to put orange Velcro. Even the flak vest, the white flak vest, was pristine white and flat. Well, in the movie, they all have these little tubes that run, little cooling tubes. And people always look at my tubes that are sticking out and they go, "Oh man, your tubes are sticking out on your thing." Have you watched the movie?
Oh,
they actually stick out. They actually stick out on the in the movie. You see them, so it's canon for them to be visible.
Awesome. And you know what? They were rebels. Of course, it would have been visible. These weren't like made in some beautiful factory.
Right,
These were guys fighting against the Empire.
And I'll see somebody wear something that they buy, online that it's a complete X-Wing pilot costume, and it's bright orange, and their vest is perfectly bleached white, and I'm thinking, no.
Star Wars was a worn universe. That was part of what made it great.
That's why you see stains on the pocket areas and on the high wear areas. The white is not white. It's dirty. It's got stains on it. I throw it around on the garage floor and kick it around a little bit. I have several versions. I actually have the Hoth version too.
Oh, cool.
And I've got the jacket, and the jacket,
you have that inner warming helmet.
Yes, I do.
I always thought that was so cool.
Yeah, the bomber hood. So I have all of those, and again, even the bomber hood, I kicked that around in the garage a bit to make it dirty because none of this stuff is supposed to be clean. As you're a rebel, you're living out of caves, You're living on, ice planets. I mean, you're not, you're not spit shine
Sleeping
military.
in tauntauns.
Yeah, you're around tauntauns. Those things are dirty animals if you've ever seen one.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And they smell bad on the inside.
Yeah. So you're dressed as a pilot. I want to wrap up by what is your top dogfight, fighting scene in all of Star Wars? The whole thing.
Oh, the best one.
I mean, you can give me a couple if you want.
Well, I mean, obviously the New Hope, Luke in the trench. I mean, that edge of your seat. Is he going to make that shot? The first time you see it.
And the score, the moment of relief when it goes in, the look on his face.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I don't think I can describe that feeling. The feeling of watching that.
Yeah, I don't think you could do any better with Womp Rats.
Yeah, that one's magic. I would say the dogfight at the end of Jedi is great, but the other moment that makes me feel that lifted me like that was the first flight of the Falcon in Force Awakens. To me, when that took off and Rey gets
all
that
over
thing
the
in
place.
gear and it flies, to me it opened up a world of possibility that I'm like, oh my God, Star Wars is back. It was that moment.
Somebody other than Han is flying this thing, and you can tell.
Yeah, and it was truly amazing.
It's like watching somebody fly a helicopter for the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great to watch. So, but that was that. I'd say New Hope, the trench, right there at the end. Fighting off the TIE fighters behind him, getting Vader in behind you.
Oh yeah.
Doing everything you can. And you see that. I mean, it's like edge of your seat. It's like, all right, who's gonna win this one? Is Vader gonna get a shot in on him? He's already killed R2. He's already down.
Oh yeah,
it's a
just
rocky.
him.
Yeah, it's a rocky moment, man. He's up against the ropes. Is he gonna come back and he's gonna win this one? And
he goes the distance.
Let's go, kid. And let's.
That's great.
So that one I think, because it does, it becomes a man-on-man dogfight. It really is. It's not a whole squadron of guys. It's not. It's not like the buzzard scene of the Clone War or Return of the Jedi, or Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin and Ben are flying the Jedi starfighters, and there's thousands and thousands of ships flying everywhere, and I mean the big massive air war. Or space war. Yeah, exactly. It's right. It is just who is the better. Yeah. Who's the better shot? Who's the better at this
pilot?
point now, it's just down to two people, and all you can hear the sound of the rushing by. You hear him breathing.
Oh, yeah.
You hear the electronics doing their thing, and Darth Vader. But it's all it's become that iconic man on man. And this is before father son. You don't know.
Oh, right, yeah. I don't remember not knowing that, but you're right. Rick Stafford, thank you so much for being a part of the Friday Night Movie family and for doing this amazing interview.
My pleasure.
So grateful. Let's make sure people know where they can follow you.
Okay. Let's see. On Facebook, you can follow me at The True Aquaman. Also on Instagram, The True Aquaman. On Twitter, it'll be The King Aquaman. And I'm usually in the Southeast as far as conventions are concerned. So if it's a fairly major convention, I try to make an appearance if I'm not already a guest. And if things go well, I may actually be in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia next weekend for Stan Lee Comic-Con. That's actually in the talks right now. We're waiting right now for confirmation. So I am an international cosplayer. I do travel the country and around the world on a regular basis as Aquaman. And that's for another interview.
That's another interview. Well, thank you so much for talking Star Wars with us today.
My pleasure.
An amazing time here at Gamer Comic Expo. You're a true gentleman. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the Friday Night Movie Podcast. Thanks so much for being a part of our Pottern family. Remember to listen and subscribe to the show everywhere that you get your podcasts. And of course, follow us on social media at Fry Night Movie on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks again for listening.